Welcome to the Benzino Podcast, where we're calling a spade. Great to be here with you guys today. Woo-wee! Damn! The Indiana Fever returns fire. The Indiana Fever responding to what Sophie Cunningham had to say. The Indiana Fever responding to the sexual harassment allegations that Brianna Turner laid upon them. Now, the Indiana Fever's response to what Sophie Cunningham had to say is actually quite interesting because it directly goes against what
Sophie Cunningham stood her ground, looked the cameras dead in the eye, and refused to blink. She wasn't just defending her play, she was doubling down on a worldview that the WNBA establishment wants buried. The room went silent when she confirmed she meant every word about protecting women's sports from biological men. It wasn't just a statement, it was a declaration of war against the league's new direction. In that moment, her career shifted from being a star enforcer to a political lightning rod, and the fallout was immediate, brutal, and visible on the court.
Interesting, because it directly goes against what Stephanie White said. The Indiana Fever said, "Oh, we want everybody to be fans here." But Stephanie White said, "Well, we don't want everybody to be a fan, you know? If you don't think like me, talk like me, act like me, walk like me, we really don't want you to be a fan over here." Sophie Cunningham's statements almost seem to be a little bit conflicting with Stephanie White. Now, we said this yesterday during the live stream. Where has Sophie...
Everyone expected an apology, a PR-cleansed retraction to make the sponsors happy. Instead, Sophie doubled down on what some are calling the MAGA Barbie persona, claiming she was simply speaking common sense. She wasn't just talking about sports, she was talking about the very fabric of the locker room. The media flooded her with demands that she walk it back, but Sophie held her line. She claimed she has morals and beliefs she won't compromise for a paycheck. But in professional sports, when you go against the grain, the establishment has ways of making you pay, and they didn't wait long to strike.
I'm here to extend love, but I also think with that love is truth and being honest. And I want to protect young girls in the locker room or young girls in sport who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Now, prior to yesterday's game, the Indiana Fever media, they flooded Sophie Cunningham. "Apologize, Sophie, apologize! How dare you!" And then Sophie Cunningham says...
In that story with ESPN, you talked about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common.
The punishment arrived faster than anyone anticipated. During the very next game, Sophie Cunningham, a player who usually anchors the floor, was nowhere to be found. She played a shocking 7 minutes in the first half, a number so low it sent ripples through the arena. This wasn't a coaching error or a fatigue issue, it felt like a cold, calculated benching. The message was loud and clear: if you don't play the game the way the league wants, you won't be playing the game at all. It looked like a total minutes restriction disguised as a rotation change, and fans were quick to notice the shift.
"Sophie, apologize! How dare you!" And then Sophie Cunningham says...
In that story with ESPN, you talked about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense. And I think I'll always believe in that. I think it's really important to protect children, and that's little girls who are also involved in that category. And so I stand on what I said, and I always believe that.
Yeah, do you see your advocacy on that, like, taking any form going forward?
You know, I don't know. I'm not a very political person, but I do have beliefs. I have morals, and...
This sudden benching appeared to be the direct result of her clash with the league's new golden era, specifically the protection surrounding stars like Caitlin Clark. Sophie has always been the enforcer, the one who isn't afraid to get physical and target the opposition's best players. But in a league that is now hyper-focused on its image and protecting its biggest investments, that old-school grit is being labeled as problematic. When Sophie spoke out about biological men in sports, she wasn't just sharing an opinion, she was attacking the very inclusivity the WNBA is currently building its entire brand upon.
Would apologize, would walk back all of her words that came out in that article. You were hoping. Sophie Cunningham played 7 minutes in the first half after doubling down on what she said. Folks, I don't remember Sophie Cunningham playing 7 minutes in a first half all season long in the game that she's played it. But then after that, you have the Indiana Fever putting out a statement. Our players are thoughtful adults with their own perspectives and voices, and those views are their own. We are committed to welcoming fans from every background and treating everyone with respect. And
Stephanie White didn't mince words when she addressed the situation, and her stance was the complete opposite of Sophie's. White made it clear that the league is about inclusivity, diversity, and uplifting marginalized communities. She basically told the world that if you don't agree with those values, you aren't a real fan of the WNBA. This created a massive divide within the organization. On one side, you have a player standing on what she calls truth and morals. On the other, you have a head coach and a front office demanding total alignment with social norms. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife.
Of every background, Stephanie White said, if you're not about inclusivity, diversity, uplifting, preaching, supporting the marginalized, well then Stephanie White said that she doesn't want you as a fan.
Sneakers on today. Before we start with questions, I just want to address, what's going on with AT. I think first and foremost, it's to protect our players. We've got to continue to support our players in our league. We get to play a basketball game. And AT was...
The Indiana Fever found themselves in a PR nightmare, trying to juggle these conflicting identities. They put out a statement claiming they welcome fans from every background, but that directly contradicted Stephanie White's fiery press conference. White was essentially gatekeeping the fandom, telling people to stay away if they didn't share her specific worldview. This internal power struggle is starting to leak onto the court, affecting playing time and team chemistry. Sophie is being caught in the middle of a culture war that she refused to back down from, even when her minutes were being slashed to nothing.
Made us all aware of that earlier this morning, late last night. Indiana Fever put out a statement about that. Quote, protecting our players and employees and maintaining a respectful, professional workplace is our top priority. Our policy is to take concerns seriously, investigate thoroughly, and act promptly when appropriate to protect the people in our organization and ensure everyone is treated with professionalism and respect. Fostering trust and safety in that process means we do not comment on personnel matters involving former employees. Now, I'm not sure what people were expecting the Indiana Fever to say.
Sophie's comments about Title IX were the final straw for many of her critics. She argued that, without the protection of women's sports from biological men, the greats of the game would never have had a platform. She phrased it as common sense, but the timing couldn't have been worse. With the eyes of the world on the WNBA, thanks to the Caitlin Clark effect, the league is desperate to maintain a polished, progressive image. Sophie's raw honesty was seen as a loose cannon that needed to be secured. Benching her was the only way the coaching staff felt they could regain control of the narrative.
Brianna Turner has done, she's opened up a whole can of worms. Because I'm seeing people speculate, oh, it was this person, oh, it was that person. Well, this person or that person comes forward and says, I was the one that got da-da-da-da-da, and these were and this is what happened to me, and da-da-da-da-da. Well, that person that did it will probably have to feel emboldened to protect their name. Interesting. The Indiana Fever responded quite quickly to the they responded within 24 hours to the Sophie Cunningham statement, and they responded within 12 hours to the Brianna Turner statement. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video, hype the video.
But the drama didn't stop with Sophie's benching. A massive bombshell dropped from within the league when Brianna Turner went public with allegations of sexual harassment within the Fever organization. She revealed that a staff member had been fired for inappropriate conduct, opening up a whole new can of worms. Suddenly, the team that was preaching inclusivity and respect was being exposed for having a toxic internal environment. It created a bizarre contrast. They were punishing Sophie for her vocal opinions while simultaneously dealing with a real-world scandal involving the safety of their own players. The Fever's response to the harassment allegations was swift but guarded. They claim they take these matters seriously and that their top priority is a professional workplace. However, the timing of this revelation, coupled with the Sophie Cunningham controversy, makes the organization look like it's in total disarray. While they were busy trying to manage Sophie's public image and restrict her minutes for her controversial views, they were dealing with a much more serious issue behind closed doors. It raises the question of whether the benching was a distraction or a genuine disciplinary action. Stephanie White's rhetoric about not being a jerk online was clearly directed at the fans who have been vocal about Sophie's situation. She demanded that everyone hold themselves to a higher standard, but many fans felt she was being hypocritical. You can't preach inclusivity while actively excluding people who have different traditional beliefs. This ideological clash is tearing the fan base apart. Half the fans see Sophie as a hero for speaking her truth, while the other half see her as a relic of a past that the WNBA is trying desperately to move away from in this new high-stakes era. The fact that Sophie played only 7 minutes in that first half is a statistic that will haunt this season. For a player of her caliber, that is an insult, plain and simple. It was a public shaming on the biggest stage possible. Usually, when a player targets a star like Caitlin Clark, they get a fine or a foul. But Sophie's punishment went deeper than the rule book. It went to her very identity as a professional athlete. By taking away her time on the court, they were trying to take away her voice. But, as we've seen, Sophie Cunningham isn't the type of person to stay silent for long. The media's role in this has been relentless. They cornered Sophie, hoping for a tearful apology or a standard corporate walk back. When she said, "I stand on what I said," you could almost hear the collective gasp from the press corps. She didn't use the typical athlete speak to wiggle out of the controversy, she leaned into it. She acknowledged the negative feedback, but insisted that her love for the game and the young girls playing it was based on what she calls the truth. That kind of defiance is rare in today's sports world, where every word is usually vetted by a dozen agents. The fallout from the Breonna Turner statement is still settling, and it's adding a layer of complexity to the Sophie saga. If the team is truly about protecting women, as they claim in their statements regarding the fired staffer, then why are they so quick to punish a player who claims she is also trying to protect women in her own way? The definitions of protection and respect seem to be at the heart of this entire conflict. The Fever are trying to navigate a minefield of social issues while trying to win games, and right now, it looks like they are losing on both fronts. Stephanie White's insistence that the league is at the forefront of social norms is a bold claim. It positions the WNBA not just as a sports league, but as a political entity. This shift is exactly what Sophie Cunningham seems to be pushing back against. She stated she isn't a political person, yet her very existence on the court has become a political statement. When she gets physical with players like Clark, it's no longer seen as just a hard foul, it's interpreted through the lens of her public comments. Every move she makes is now scrutinized for hidden meanings and malicious intent. The internal speculation about the fired staff member is reaching a fever pitch. Fans are demanding names and details, but the organization is hiding behind personnel privacy policies. This lack of transparency is only fueling the fire. People are wondering if there's a connection between the internal culture and the way players like Sophie are being handled. If the environment is as toxic as the allegations suggest, then the public lectures from the coaching staff about inclusivity start to ring hollow. It looks like a classic case of, do as I say, not as I do. Sophie's reference to Title IX was a master class in using the league's own history to defend her position. She pointed out that the very protections that allowed women's sports to flourish are being undermined. By framing her argument around the legal and historical protection of female athletes, she made it much harder for the league to simply dismiss her as a bigot. She's tapping into a very real concern among many athletes who feel that the rapid changes in the sports world are leaving the original mission of women's athletics behind in favor of modern social trends. The reaction from the other players in the league has been mostly quiet, but the silence speaks volumes. Many are likely afraid of the same punishment Sophie received. If a veteran can have her minutes slashed and her character questioned for speaking her mind, what does that mean for a rookie or a bench player? The atmosphere in the WNBA is becoming one of high-stakes conformity. You either get in line with the approved narrative, or you find yourself watching the game from the sidelines. Sophie Cunningham is currently the poster child for what happens when you refuse to bend. The Caitlin Clark factor cannot be ignored in any of this. As the new face of the league, Clark is being shielded from any controversy that could tarnish her brand. Sophie's aggressive play and her outspoken views are seen as a threat to the clean, marketable image the league wants to project. By punishing Sophie, the league is sending a message to everyone: don't mess with the money. If targeting the league's stars or questioning its values hurts the bottom line, the league will act swiftly and decisively to neutralize the threat, regardless of a player's history. The Indiana Fever statement about fostering trust and safety is being put to the ultimate test. They are currently facing a crisis of confidence from both their players and their fans. With sexual harassment allegations on one side and a benching scandal on the other, the organization is crumbling under the weight of its own contradictions. They want to be seen as a beacon of progress, but their actions suggest a much more chaotic reality. The fans are starting to see through the corporate speak, and they are demanding real answers that the team doesn't seem ready to give. Sophie Cunningham's future with the team is now a massive question mark. Can a player survive in an environment where the head coach has publicly denounced her worldview? It seems unlikely that this relationship can be repaired without one side completely surrendering. Given Sophie's recent comments, she isn't planning on backing down anytime soon. This could lead to a trade or a release, which would only further ignite the controversy. The league is watching closely because how the Fever handles Sophie will set the precedent for how all teams handle dissent in the future. The idea of a love-hate relationship with fans that Stephanie White mentioned is being stretched to its breaking point. While she claims the league welcomes competition and heat, the reality on the ground suggests otherwise. There is a very specific type of fan being courted right now, and anyone who doesn't fit that mold is being told they aren't wanted. This is a dangerous game for a league that is finally seeing record-breaking growth. If you alienate a huge chunk of your audience because they agree with players like Sophie, that growth could vanish just as quickly as it arrived. In the end, this isn't just about 7 minutes on a basketball court. It's about who gets to define the future of women's sports. Is it the players who have been in the trenches for years, or the executives and coaches who are chasing a new social agenda? Sophie Cunningham has become the unlikely face of this struggle. Whether you love her or hate her, you can't deny that she has forced a conversation that the WNBA was trying to avoid. The punishment she faced was meant to silence her, but instead, it has amplified her message to a global audience. As the season progresses, the eyes of the world will remain on the Indiana Fever. Every minute Sophie plays, or doesn't play, will be analyzed for its political implications. The organization is at a crossroads, and every move they make is being scrutinized by a divided public. Will they double down on their exclusion of dissenting voices, or will they find a way to truly be inclusive of everyone, including those with traditional beliefs? The answer will define the legacy of this era of the WNBA, and right now, the truth is looking a lot more complicated than the league wants to admit.